Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to install Postgresql, or the short name Postgres, which is a relational database inside of a Docker container, which is a image format for containers. If you're not familiar with Docker or containers, they're a great way to keep your application's dependencies bundled and in sync with your application. Therefore, you're more easily able to move it across environments, and it is better isolated from the operating system itself. Containers also do really great resource allocation so that they can share if you're running a bunch of different container workloads on a machine, etc. So if you're not familiar with Docker, go ahead and take a look at it. Other than that, we're ready to start. So first things first, you need to go to docker.com and install Docker, Docker Desktop, if you haven't already installed that. This will install the Docker engine, which allows you to manage those containers. Once you have Docker fully installed, you're going to want to launch your favorite text editor. Mine is PyCharm. I'm going to call this project SQL Generator. Now, we're only going to be setting up the database right now, but the reason I'm calling this SQL Generator is because after this video, I'm going to use this same project to actually do a SQL Generator application, and I'll be doing a tutorial on that as well. All right, now that that's loaded, I'm going to go ahead and close the main.py that's created. In fact, if we want, we can delete it because we are not going to use it right now. What we need to create is a new file called docker compose.yml, which is YAML. YAML, yet another markup language. Excuse me, you'll notice the A is missing from this extension, but you can also do it as .yaml with the 4-letter extension. The first thing we need to do to create a YAML file, which is a config format, I should have mentioned, is specify the version for the syntax or the YAML version we're going to use, in this case version 3. Followed by services, which tells Docker Compose like the containers that we're about to instantiate. I'm going to call the first one database, the first and only, because in this video we're only going to do the database container. And the image that I'm going to specify is Postgres 11. That image is going to actually pull from a place called Docker Hub, which is where companies and people upload their Docker images so that other people can reuse them. If we didn't have a Docker image to pull from Docker Hub, we would have to create a Docker file to create our own image. But thankfully enough, somebody has already taken the opportunity to create a Postgres image, and we are just going to use it by specifying the image name. The container name, this is whatever we want. I'm going to call mine SQL Generator. The environment file, this allows us to specify environment variables for the container, so that's pretty cool. Oops, don't need that. Restart always, this will restart the container if it fails. Ports is a list of port mappings local to I always say local to destination, but what I really mean is the exported versus internal ports that the application is going to run on inside the container. Volumes, this is perhaps the most important part, but it just so happens that I'm setting it up the default way. So I believe if we omitted this, it would run just fine. But the reason I'm putting it here is because later, if you want to make any changes to the mount points or the file system point where the data is actually loaded, you can do that. So by kind of being explicit about this, it enables you later to do more customization. So this is our Docker Compose file. As I mentioned, we created a .env reference here, but we don't actually have a .env file. So if we went to go build this container, it would fail. So we're going to create a new file called .env, and inside of that, we are going to create environment variables for the user, which is Postgres, and the a password for it, which I'm just going to have as SQL Generator. Okay, now that that exists, and that's all saved, I can come over here to the SQL Generator folder, and we're going to run docker compose up -- build. So docker compose up, starts any containers that we already have built. But the first time we try to turn up a container, we have to actually have it built. So to do that, I pass the -- build flag. I think if I don't do that, it might automatically build the container. Now, when you do this, you might have to first download the image and compile it. I already use the Postgres image from Docker Hub all the time in more than one container. So the way Docker works is kind of magical. It can use that container image and create other container layers on top of it to create unique containers. This is a little advanced on how Docker works, but long story short, mine went really, really quickly because it took that 282 megabyte image that already existed and just basically said, hey, I've already got that built. I'll just create a new container for you with that and run it. And that's what you see here. So Postgres is actually running. And to prove that to you, if I go into my SQL generator folder again, and I'm going to cat the environment variables because this one, the password, we actually need to export. So I'm going to do export for the, this is for the local shell to be able to use that variable later. So we've exported that variable, and then we need to type pg password equals Postgres password. This is basically, we're just copying the environment variable name that we set to the one that Postgres, pSQL, which is the Postgres command line tool, expects. So then we're going to say pSQL host that we want to connect to is localhost. Port is 5432, as you saw me do in the Docker Compose. The user is Postgres, which is pretty standard. And then W means that we're supplying the password on the command line. You could also do a capital W here, and it would prompt for the password. So because I'm specifying it in the beginning of this line, I'm going to use -W, and it will log me in. There we go. So now we're inside of Postgres, and we have nothing created yet, but we're able to go ahead and do what we need to. So this is a really short video just to show you how to quickly get Postgres up and running using Docker, and then you can take this image and inside this Docker Compose that we have below here, we could say, whoops, actually not where volumes is, but like right here, we could start to say like app or website or whatever and start defining what that other container is going to be. For that one, we would likely create a Docker file because it would probably be a brand new image of our application. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this will help you set up your development environment using a Postgres database in the future. And if you have any questions or have any comments, please leave them below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.